Cindy? Hi, Cindy. Cindy, have you started with the meeting?
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Meeting has started yet, Chairperson.
Good evening, members and guests. I'm just wondering if colleagues from PBO and the Secretary's office could please share the presentations so that we can make sure that there are no glitches with them when we share them. Thank you. Can I maybe start with a presentation from the Secretary's office of the Secretary, please? It's all good on my side. Thank you, colleague. Dr. Yankees, if you are able to share your presentation, can we share yours quickly?
Madam Cindy, can you hear me? Madam Cindy, can you hear me? Cindy, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Dr. Yankees.
Hello, Cindy. Good afternoon, Cindy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I don't know what's happening. I can't hear Cindy, and it's quiet. I don't know what's happening. I think I had a problem with my volume or sound.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on as well. So I can hear you. Thank you so much for clarifying it. Chair, because I was struggling also. Yeah. Good evening, Chairperson. Are you well? Good morning.
Good afternoon, members. Cindy, am I audible?
Good evening, Dr. Janji. Good evening, Co-Chairperson. You're audible. I think you have read my message, ne? My challenge.
No,
but I'm here.
no, I haven't.
No, I've sent a WhatsApp about my situation, but I'm in the meeting.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, double
I'm
packed.
also traveling. But I hope I'll be stable for the duration of the meeting. Maybe let's start. Yeah, let's start.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, Co-Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm not sure if the speaker has joined the meeting. And Ndate Masondo, I'm not sure if they are part of the meeting. Cindy, can I be advised?
Chairperson, we have not heard from the speaker or the chairperson. I assume they are not able to join.
All right, that's fine. STP is present?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. We don't require a quorum for this meeting.
We don't require a quorum, Chair, but we've only got the two presentations from the Secretary to Parliament and the Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office.
Okay. Can we get apologies if there are any from your side, Cindy?
There's an apology from Mr. Singh. He's unable to join the meeting. May Marshall may join a little bit later. Mr. Hai may also, he might struggle with connectivity, but he has joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much.
May also have difficulties participating.
Okay, thank you so much. That's from Cindy's side. Members, any apologies? Okay, none. All right, can we then get to business? Since the speaker and Tate Masondo are not present, we'll then go direct to the review of the, or maybe before we do that, can I get a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda?
Chair?
Yes, Co-Chair?
Co-Chairperson, I move, but I want to raise something. I've been advised that our meeting is live. Those who are able to open, please, they are requested to open their videos if the network allows, because we know we have challenges with network. It's live. Thank you.
Okay, those who are able to open their cameras, please do so. My humble apologies, I am unable to do so. Those who are able to do so, including you, Chairperson. Co-Chair.
Yes, Madam.
Just open your video. I am unable to open my. Okay. No, because it's door-to-door time, you know, and we know that we're not supposed to attend parliament meetings with organizational locals. So that's the only reason why I'm unable to open my video.
I understand.
And as indicated that I am traveling, but I will be connected for the duration. Okay, Mem Mahlangu has moved for the adoption. Can we get a seconder?
I second the motion of the co-chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hadebe. All right, can we then invite the Secretary to Parliament to give us the briefing on the status reports, the review of the FMPPLA and the development of regulations to the legislation, the organizational realignment, progress made in the resolution of various challenges related to the operation of the Parliamentary Budget Office. We'll take all three presentations and then we'll allow for engagements at the end of the third presentation. So STP, you will be leading and you'll advise who is going to take us through the presentations. Thank you very much and you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chair, and good evening to
recording in progress,
as well as all the members of the Joint Standing Committee. And thank you for the opportunity. We are trying to flight the presentation to be able to reflect the issues that we will be talking about. So my focus, Chairperson, will be on the financial management of Parliament legislation, the regulations that were worked upon to give effect to the provisions of the Act. How far are we on that process? I would like to check with you, Chairperson, that the presentation does show. Are members able to see? I can see it on my side, but I'm not sure on your side.
We can see STP.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So that's what we will be covering on. And then a separate presentation will be led by my colleague, Dumisani Janjis, as the head of the Budget Office of Parliament. So Dr. Janjis will then cover that aspect, but members will be able to see the greater potential for alignment of processes to make sure that we are able to work on the experience acquired since FMPPLA was passed, enacted in 2009, and amendments that came after, as well as the enactment of the Money Bills Amendment Act. So all of those, with the experience of implementation, have now surfaced issues that warrant the institutions to possibly relook at and not only look at aspects of a procedural dimension, which is minor amendments or passage of regulations. The second part of our presentation, Chairperson, will be on the organizational realignment. How far are we on this particular matter? So I will do the 1 and 2, and the 2 of it, my colleague, Mr. Griffiths, will be able to present on that part in terms of updating the members. How far have we gone on this process and what are the subsequent stages? So this is part of the overarching transformation program on many issues that were not moving in the organization. One of those was finality on the org review. So we will be taking members through what we are doing to create stability in the organization and what are we doing. So Mr. Lubisi, as the head of that project, will be able to talk to it. On the review of FMPPLA, Chairperson and honorable members will recall that this act, when it was promulgated in 2009, there is a requirement that regulation must be developed to regulate issues of party funding, cash management, investment, and data management. And these have now since been done, including matters of SCM regulations, to make sure that they can be in a regulation format as opposed to simple policy documents. And these issues are a product that is envisaged in Section 65 of the FMPPLA rather. But because the legislation in terms of its overall structure speaks to Parliament and provincial legislatures, it then required an across-the-board engagement with legislatures and starting at the level of officials were a number of issues as we implement the legislation. There will be matters raised by Auditor General in regard to audits of this. So CFO and legal advisors played a particular role in terms of inputs, and then these matters get fed to various speakers' forums. And when these matters were considered in subsequent years, it became clear that the Act itself may require review to make sure that the issues around regulation are not only tackled separately, but it takes into account the importance of looking at substantive reviews in the Act itself. And various speakers raised these matters that with the delay that came and the kind of direction that Parliament wants to pursue in terms of strengthening oversight, in terms of creating a structured way to deal with the budget of Parliament, how do we make sure that in pursuing the regulation, we create one package of undertaking so that you don't amend these ones and then next year, possible, the structural review of the Act itself warrants substantive amendments to the Act itself, the Principal Act, and then you've got regulation. Should we not rather look at it comprehensively? This was the last undertaking of the speakers reflecting on this matter. And because the timelines were almost close to the end of the term of the 6th Parliament, somewhere around the latter part of last year, the last Speakers Forum was briefed by the Executive Authority to say that there is a need to deal with this matter comprehensively, and perhaps with the remaining timelines between now and March, there's a heavy traffic of many bills. So to take a bill on the amendments of FMPLA may not be an easy undertaking. So if there's a decision around the regulations being part of that, perhaps the 7th Parliament must be the one that looks into that matter. So that process will then be undertaken in the 7th Parliament. A number of issues also warrant structural issues that came out of the Speakers Forum. So there's regulation, there's potential for creating substantive reviews on the legislation itself. And one of those issues is a process that Parliament used to undertake in developing and managing its budget. Historically, members may recall, those who have been in Parliament for a long time, possible in the 5th or 4th Parliament, or the first one for that matter, that in the absence of the financial management of Parliament legislation, Parliament was able to interact with Treasury in regard to its own budget. And there was a multi-party subcommittee established in terms of the joint rules of Parliament. And that structure was able to assess the budget of Parliament, make representation, and so on. And with Parliament's evolution, that structure was subsequently replaced with the adoption of a governance oversight authority, a process in the form of a structure. And then later on, with the advent of the FMPLA and its adoption in 2009, that was also replaced. And it gave effect to strengthening of oversight in terms of focus of Parliament on the budget. And interestingly, it did not define clearly the process of how to structure Parliament's budget. At the level of administration, it requires the Secretary of Parliament to draft the budget. In terms of the provision of the current Act, then the presiding officers, meaning the Executive Authority, then interacts with the Minister of Finance. So a committee of Parliament given specific roles, like a joint rules committee, a joint standing committee of Parliament that has got an oversight mechanism, authority over issues of Parliament, doesn't locate that as a budget development mandate for the committee. When you contrast with the past, pre the advent of 2009, there was a political process to be able to manage the development of Parliament. So it then places the speaker and the chairperson as EA to create a space for consulting with the Minister of Finance. There is no specificity of the meaning of that consultation. It will be about presenting a draft and possible, hopefully, persuading the finance to adjust issues. But we don't have a full process. And it says only the speaker and the chairperson in the capacity of EA shall represent Parliament in the discussion with the Minister of Finance. So that on its own is not a problem. The key issue is what is the mechanism in both houses to have a political structure to do the inputting phase, take into account a number of issues that pertain to members' interest, that pertains to funding of political parties, that pertain to all those issues. They get pursued in an ad hoc level. So how do you create a structure so that those matters are attended to? So that became a very clear issue that there is a need perhaps for Parliament to make sure that a structured process is in place to be able, by the time it triggers interface between EA and the minister, that process is multi-encompassing inside Parliament. So that has been raised that it's important that Parliament must look into that. I will touch later on in terms of the basis for that. Where are the specific opportunities to do that? So that will also guide how to regularize clearly the engagement of Parliament with the National Treasury. If you look at the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Act, it was also passed in 2009, and it gives effect to the provision envisaged in Section 77 of the Constitution. And that was later finally passed as an amendment in 2019. Establish Budget Office, define what its work is, and make sure that you are able to see the fullness of what needs to be done in terms of empowering Parliament to deal with the processing of the budget once tabled in the House. So rules have also been established in terms of establishing the Budget Office to facilitate the implementation. And sadly, owing to a number of capacity issues, the Act itself has not been fully applied. And one of the reasons for this is that the number of processes in the Act requires rules to be expanded. The Subcommittee on the Review of National Assembly Rules has since drafted rules in this regard. It's quite clear also that further board consultation will be taken on the draft rules with a view to concluding the matter in the 6th Parliament. The 6th Parliament is coming to an end fairly soon. And these matters, it's not yet clear whether in the current outstanding priorities, those matters will be concluded. Now, what are some of the provisions and possible limitations that needs to be looked at? Section 16, for instance, of the FMPPLA requires that Parliament develops a budget and motivate its use for the funds required. This requires Parliament to provide explanations. Now, 16D in the FMPPLA requires Parliament to explain exactly what it needs. Now, explanation is not clearly outlined, but in a non-legal interpretation of that, it would mean that any funds requested to pursue mandates of Parliament, the oversight mandate, the public participation mandate, the lawmaking mandate, its interconnectedness, as well as international engagements of Parliament in terms of its international diplomacy, as well as promoting cooperative governance. How do we say the money we have is adequate without providing clearer explanations? We have then interpreted this Section 16D to say that it does augur space for us to develop what we shared with the Joint Study Committee last year, to say we would need to develop a funding model for Parliament so that we are clear about means of revenue, means of expenditure, projections, and estimates of what does it take to perform oversight. What is the landscape of oversight in Parliament at a committee level, at a House level? What is the outbound mission of performing oversight? What is the cost of undertaking that? We are unable to provide and articulate explanations that are envisaged in Section 16D. It is our view that based on that, it provides a case for Parliament to have a funding model so that the discussions of Parliament as an institution are not limited to a question of saying the budget of Parliament has been eroded. Maybe the erosion has long been running, but it might have been erosion moving from what is substantially an underfunding of Parliament or adequate funding of Parliament, which will then have different conversations altogether, as long as we're able to have a rational basis to explain why do we need X amount of funds, on what basis is that X allocated, and what is the praxis of doing that. When we perform oversight, the ad hoc issues and any other matter of the entirety of the fiscus of the state, as tabled in Parliament, what will it take to do that work? And now we are looking at issues that are arising out of the contextual implementation of these mandates, especially for the sixth Parliament, that it had to contend with many issues. The State Capture Commission pointed out a number of limitations that require Parliament to implement certain remedial measures. What would be the basis to ask for X rents on the basis of that? A number of jurisprudence on cases where Parliament has passed laws. Our courts, High Court, Supreme Court, and Constitutional Court have made pointed findings on a number of bills that Parliament has processed. Once they are enacted, they will be found to be implemented in a manner that is not consistent with the Constitution, especially the public participation dimension of Parliament in its lawmaking. So how do we quantify what do we need to be able to perform adequate oversight? So all of those issues are very important. We have also looked at Section 17(2) B and C of the budget of Parliament and issues around supplementary budget before they must go to National Treasury, including any revision or appropriation in terms of those. So the procedural aspect, there are no limitations, but there are structural issues in terms of the timing issues that we have looked at, where we say perhaps there's a case for the need to comprehensively relook at the practical implementation of this legislation insofar as strengthening aspects that otherwise may not have arisen out of implementation in terms of those areas. Also, in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Act in detail, Section 8(1) requires Parliament to refer the fiscal framework and report to its Finance Committee. So once the budget is tabled by the Minister of Finance in February of a financial year, Section 8 requires that Parliament itself refers those tablings to the Finance Committee of both houses. And then it offers 16 days for committees to run public hearings in those houses. And once it has come back, it then offers Parliament in Section 8(4) the opportunity then to accept or amend the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. And it then sets parameters within which Parliament can amend the fiscal framework and revenue proposals as tabled by the Minister. So again, Section 8(4) provides room for Parliament to consider adopting entirely or effect amendment. That power is in Parliament. And we are saying prior to even reach that stage, we need to strengthen the FMPPLA so that consultation with finance takes into account of the current structural limitations of how the budget is done. FFC prepares drafts, recommendations. It gets tabled to finance in terms of recommendations on how revenue should be split between the three spheres. And once it gets to finance through the Minister of Finance, in terms of the executive, there is a structure that processes the budget before Cabinet approves the estimates and frameworks of the fiscal policy and revenue projections and expenditure priorities in the MTF. And that structure is called MINCOMBUD, Ministerial Committee on Budget. Once it is done, it goes to Cabinet. But there's three arms of the state. So what is the interface point for the legislative arm of the state prior to the indicative allocations being signed off? And once they are signed off, letters get sent to all departments, including the other two arms of the state. So the suggestion of creating a politically defined process of Parliament looking at its own budget, so at the EA, when they go to engage on this, there is a space for that matter to be looked at. Interestingly, since yesterday, there was a 30-year review of the human rights under the auspice of a human rights conference to look at the 30 years of human rights in our country and so on. And the three arms of the state were presenting them. One of the issues raised about the question of independence and interdependence of the spheres. The Chief Justice said, for the last 30 years, I don't recall a moment, either personal independence for myself or any other members, getting a call even from a member of the executive and or president. But where we are concerned as we conclude 30 years is the aspect of institutional independence on the arms of the state, because our budgets gets allocated by departments or ministries. Possible there's room for engagement on securing and protecting institutional independence. And I would imagine when you look at the question of Parliament itself, what are the issues that we need to tighten the aspect of budget making for Parliament to make sure that its work is also at an institutional level, it is bolstered to be able to undertake its work. So those are the areas that would require Parliament to reflect and perhaps use the 30 years to tighten what otherwise may have been aspects that were well intended, but perhaps not well defined to secure, protect, and advance institutional independence of Parliament insofar as budget management. So those are the areas that we're saying from a merit co-chairs or members, perhaps they're re-looking at FMPLA, the regulations that have been outstanding up until a stage where they were fully adopted by October by all 9 legislatures and Parliament through representation of EA, and their decision to say, should we not rather take into account these 2 legislation, money bills, as well as the FMPLA, so that if there is a case to deal with the structural aspects of those legislation, we then deal with the regulations under that. Hence, the suggestion that we are making, Chairperson, it could also be part of the legacy report of the Joint Standing Committee to say this is where we took this matter is. It would appear that these regulations, as well as the review of the Act itself, could then be prioritized as matters for the 7th Parliament to prioritize, take into account that good work has already been canvassed by all provinces insofar as regulatory aspects. What we have not looked at this point is the fullness of the areas where regulations are not yet there. How do we deal with that? Policies are in place, executive authority approves issues. When we have matters raised by Auditor General on any of the aspects of our budget, like funding of political parties, we have implemented measures, despite not having regulations, on how to protect the institutions when funds are allocated. The Act requires us not to transfer, for example, another tranche until a political party concerned has submitted things. And we dutifully do that, and political parties are able to cooperate in terms of the institutional obligation constitutionally to transfer funds to political parties. Where the difficulties are is insofar as strengthening certain aspects of the FMPLA in terms of retention of funds. It does make provision for those, but you also have a situation in the FMPLA where it says on or before 1 October, Parliament may effect adjustments. Now, when you calculate the timeline of Parliament from April, that's the start of financial year, May, June, but it places October as an opportunity to effect the budget adjustment and motivate. If you reconcile that with the timelines within which the executive member for finance tables a medium-term budget policy statement, traditionally it normally happens on the 27th of October, 26. So in short, in the last week of October. The question to be asked at a policy level, does that afford sufficient space for Parliament, having implemented a budget possible 6 months? Or should Parliament reconsider, probably do that 4 months after the start of the financial year, meaning implement a budget April, May, June, July. 4 months, you have the basis to project whether the current cost drivers may warrant review of certain matters. So by August, you are already having representation on the budget adjustment of Parliament. So by the time October comes, the interface between the executive member concerned and Parliament does not get met with an indication that you came a bit late. So the synchronization of those space may perhaps be one area that would make sure that Parliament is not met with a difficulty where it can't spend because it must wait for certain matters to be able to discharge its constitutional obligation. Instances that happen, like having fire of Parliament, would not be timed in terms of the line. The impact of that on the operation of Parliament, what would be the aspects of effecting the changes and make representation if it's not timed in terms of the legislation that governs tabling of funds to Parliament? So it's those matters that from practice may not be a limitation or a weakness, but they may provide a scheme of how best to tighten and create a fair degree of predictability of Parliament's institution to make sure that in discharging its overarching mandate, it is not inadvertently impeded, so to speak, or lessened in its ability to discharge its mandate. Such issues like perennial problems of members, sitting with big ticket items that are drawn from the National Revenue Funds, where from practice it does weaken Parliament. We have raised this to the Joint Standing Committee, the PARMED issue, where Parliament offers medical aid for current members and former members of Parliament and former members of the executive. The debt as we speak in terms of the assessment, the quantum of it is sitting at 1.1 billion rand. It renders Parliament's current status of its financial status to be technically insolvent. And the cycle requires that Parliament must spend and Parliament will recoup it from the National Revenue Fund. So what gets appropriated to Parliament doesn't take into account what does it cost to provide this service. What is the relationship of that with the determinations that are outside Parliament and are also outside Treasury? For instance, the Board of Medical Practitioners that establishes what is an increase to be levied for medical aids. That process is outside. But when you have got allocations that says we have adjusted by 4%, it's an inflation linked, but the determination is outside. So Parliament, without fail, every year, always run above 101 million, 60 million, with the hope that at the end of the year, you will recoup from the National Revenue Fund. So the assumption is that Parliament has got sufficient fat to carry out that. To the contrary, Parliament does not have those funds at any given point. So only COVID helped Parliament to be able to build a sufficient capacity of resources, and that was a default capability, precisely because Parliament was not sitting. So the major cost drivers of logistics, traveling, and so on were diminished, resulting from COVID. But post-COVID, Parliament resumes its functions, albeit not in the most optimal condition at this point. But assuming Parliament operates in a full condition, will the issues of major cost drivers like PARMED be sustainable for Parliament to be able to do that? The funding of political parties, the interdependence between what is determined and what is funded, and recouping from the National Revenue Fund. The transitions of the terms, we are currently sitting with possible, which we have not yet quantified, the transition of the 6th Parliament to the 7th Parliament. There will be withdrawals from any of those funds. What will be the cost of Parliament processing the full implication of that from its own current budget, where currently it is reduced for 23-24 financial year by 214 million rand. Projected in 24-25, we will have to cut the budget by 265 million rand. Projected in 25-26, budget of Parliament must be cut no less than 275. When you combine that for 3 years, it is no less than 800 million rand. From a budget that is hitherto not properly quantified to enable Parliament to discharge responsibility. But with the rest of other institutions in a fiscally constrained environment, Parliament itself has also been asked. So the deepening of the erosion of budget of Parliament makes it difficult for Parliament to argue what it needs in the absence of a funding model. We are in the process of members to work on a funding model now, as presented, to be able to properly quantify so that the provision of Article 16D of the FMPPLA are given proper effect, that these are explanations that underpin any of the votes of Parliament. And this is what we want to do based on the 30 years of Parliament. That's the short I would like to give on the merit of reviewing the FMPLA, as well as the Money Bills Amendment Act, to be aligned, including the issues of regulations, honorable members. The other instrument that could also be used in terms of the budget forum, a budget committee of Parliament, instruments that could be used as ideas could be the provisions in the Joint Rules Committee to make provision for a structure to do that. The second one is the Joint Standing Committee, which is not expressly stated to do that, other than performing an oversight mechanism. And those are the issues that can be done through amendment of general rules or a special resolution of the House in the 7th Parliament to be able to create capacity politically for Parliament as an institution to oversee, determine, and set a clear out procedure that must give effect to Section 8D of Money Amendments Act. So that when amendments are effected, it's informed by a very elaborate process that navigates between FMPLA as well as the approval of the budget to balance issues of Parliament in terms of its mandate. Thank you very much. With your permission, Chairperson, we can go to org review and maybe with your guidance deal with both, or unless with your guidance you may want to graze on this aspect and deal with the org review separately. We will be guided by you.
Thank you very much. Welcome the report, STP. I think you have provoked the need for us to engage on this item. I had earlier proposed that we deal with the 3 items, but it will not be possible. I think let's pause and reflect, allow members to engage on the information that you have just shared. I think for me, one feels that indeed our democracy is deepening, that the legislature is taking its rightful position. It took us 30 years to understand and to touch issues that I feel that they were neglected for a very long time. Hence, I'm saying that the democracy is deepening. The important arm of state, it is now positioning itself to be recognized as the one that is supposed to be steering, giving direction, and most importantly, conducting oversight. Because, you know, if you conduct proper oversight, mistakes that we have experienced for the past 30 years, some of them could have been avoided if we had a strong oversight committees. But I'm saying that Chairperson, I also, not Chairperson, STP, I also wish and feel that the 7th Parliament, in addition to what you have alluded to in terms of the legislation amendment, should also not be afraid to debate reasons why we have a powerful executive and a weak legislation, which is not supposed to be the case, legislator, which is not supposed to be the case. We're supposed to be having a strong legislature, a legislature that is able to oversight over the executive and hold the executive accountable. But in our case, you know, it's the other way around. So, but going forward, we wish the 7th Parliament well, and I have no doubt that this committee of management of Parliament, of finances of Parliament, will be one of the most interesting committees going forward, Chair, STP and members. This is a debate that has always been in the corridors, but the sixth parliament was able to put it in the agenda. We've laid the foundation. Of course, not much can be done because of we've reached the end of the term, but where we have started indeed STP to where we are now, compared to what has been done in the past years, I want to commend members and say that thank you very much for your commitment and your focus and your robustness. You have never been afraid to discuss issues related to regulations and legislation, and that on its own has strengthened the committee and the important arm of state, which is the legislature. So I am going to pause there and invite comments if there are any from members. Cindy, please help me to identify members as indicated that I am traveling. Thank you. I'll pause there and invite for comments.
Chairperson, at the moment, there are no hands.
Yeah, let's get all the presentations, and then we'll comment later. Thank you.
SDP, can we move to the second item?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mr. Lubisi is our org review official, is project managing this part of the work. So this work, Chairperson, is not in isolation. It is part of the multi-pronged approach to lead transformation of the institution.
SDP?
Yes, Chairperson.
There's an echo. Yeah, there's an echo, sir.
Okay, sorry on that part. We will fix it now. We will switch off one gadget.
You are fine now.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson. So this part of this piece of work is not in isolation. We shared with the Joint Standing Committee last year the update on a comprehensive suite of interventions we're making to reposition the organization so that it is ready for the 7th Parliament macro strategy framework. We did socialize that framework with the committee in different engagements, including the detail on the process outline of how we will operationalize the strategy. We have then selected the last leg of the 6th Parliament, which is year 2023-2024, to start embedding the paradigm shift that we want to see to look forward to the 7th Parliament. And that paradigm shift is taking Parliament from process-oriented and procedural strength to being interested on the outcomes of developmental objectives that affect our country and society in general. And that talks to outcomes and impacts. So the work that we're doing, we have tested this year to identify areas where we will start mapping out, make investments on data-driven issues, impact assessments, and so on. So org realignment is also to look at capacity of Parliament to be able to lead that. The second one is the change management that would underpin that work on a cross-cutting level. The third element is the policy reviews, the underlying policy suite that supports all the direction that we want to do. The fourth one being the business process optimization to respond comprehensively that on issues that members have raising about reliability of our instruments of support, the ICT, infrastructure, dependability, data, and all of those issues that enable Parliament. The fifth leg of that is the reconstruction of Parliament, the restoration of Parliament as a building. So these are multi-pronged, but we have sampled only one aspect of update, the org review for this purpose. Others being regular updates to the committee in terms of the rebuilding of Parliament is the most area that is focused on. We did in October present the update on all other aspects, the policy review suite, the change management review suite, as well as the business optimization. So we'll focus only on org review now. And I'll ask, with your permission, Chairperson, Mr. Griffiths Lubisi, to quickly give the committee the update on the process we are following and where we are on each of those aspects. Over to you, Mr. Lubisi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me just start by indicating that I'm going to present the work that was done between July 2023 to date when I joined the Parliament. And I will focus on the major outputs of the process, but with more emphasis on the schedule as to when are we expected to finish the project and also where we are at this stage. I will start by just talking briefly to the stages, 5 stages of the project, starting from planning, as-is analysis, design, implementation, and embedding. Currently, we are on the design phase. This is where we are. The other 2 phases have been entirely completed. And even large parts of the design phase have been completed. Within the design phase, I must indicate that the focus is not just on the structures, it's on other artifacts as well. So we are looking at the to-be operating model beyond the structure as part of the final product and solution. And as you can see, the number of workshops that are listed there, capability mapping has been done, which included the management team together with the secretariat in the same venue. The macro structure has been completed. It is in the custodian of the
recording stopped
stage, because that is the level where probably he's mostly involved and he will give us direction going forward. We are about to start with the divisional structures in about 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully, according to our schedule, which I will talk to later. We also will run workshops in terms of information systems, which is the technology that will be required to support the operations of the Parliament within the new operating model.
Recording in progress.
In terms of assets, where they are distributed, and so on and so on. And management system is about the role of management in implementing this, both the strategic and design KPIs which would have been developed. Implementation phase, we'll talk more about it as I come to the project schedule itself. As you can see, it involves implementation of the new design and those aspects. And finally is the embedding phase, whereby we have project closure as well as linkage to other processes, particularly in the area of HR. We will look at that when we come to the details. I also included the business model, I think the next slide, just at high level so that chairperson and together with members and colleagues can have a view of what we have been dealing with. This is an output which took several workshops of the management team. But in a nutshell, it just explains how the 7th Parliament will sort of like operate to deliver value to the beneficiaries who are the members and citizens of the country. I will not go into the details of that, but just to give you a sense of what it involves. And the fact that it encapsulates as well several elements of the strategic themes which are required for the vision of the future parliament, that you will take a look at your own time in details. The next aspect that we dealt with in the that is the next slide. These are the design principles. And if you look, because you cannot do this kind of a work without principles that will guide you. So these are the principles that will guide us in doing work, particularly at divisional level, as to what considerations do you need to take into account without going through each one of them pound for pound. I think you can have a high-level view of what it will involve. But aspects like alignment, agility, integration of technology into the design process, transformative collaboration, team-based culture and organization, as well as cost effectiveness are all included there. I'm not going to dwell much into the details of the description or descriptors thereof. I think members and chairperson people could go through that at their own time. These are detailed descriptions of each of those design principles that I have been referring to earlier. I must also indicate that most of the work in terms of the two artifacts, that is the business model as well as the design principles, were developed from existing data, which when we started this project, the data was existing and work has been done in the past. And I must also highlight the fact that we are dealing with a process which is addressing challenges and issues which existed for almost a decade and more. So that is one aspect behind all the work that we are doing now. Now, the next aspect that I would like to touch at high level as well, we have gathered data through the workshops, and all that data and capabilities that were developed through the workshops resulted in the functional model. As you can see in front of you, at the core of it, these are the core business processes of the parliament: oversight, lawmaking, public participation, cooperative government, as well as international engagements. And if you can see, this lies between the two houses. It means the two houses are sharing the value chain processes as they are listed there. And then the rest are the functions which the parliament or the seventh parliament will require in order to deliver value to its beneficiaries. And if you refer back to the business model, you'll remember we have value propositions which are listed there. And if you look at this functional model and you look at aspects such as big data management, at the moment, the sixth parliament is in terms of operations and emphasis, we are not yet big in terms of big data management and analytics. That is a visionary aspect, or one of the functions that are quite visionary. We have also other aspects. If you look at the bottom there, continuous improvement, organizational excellence, change management, as well as data-driven transformation. Those are kind of levers which will be critical in terms of migrating from the sixth to the seventh parliament, and also to link with the macro strategic themes which have been developed. Then we can move on to the next slide. Now, the project schedule itself, as it appears here, you will realize that it starts with the development of the business model, the macro functional structure, the macro positional structure, as well as the target operating model. And you will look at the target dates there. Now, in terms of the target operating model, which comprises of the 4 workshops there, which I've already alluded to earlier, your information systems, locations, suppliers, and all, we intend to be done by the end of April. meaning that by the end of April, we must have concluded those workshops for the target operating model, as well as the macro positional structure. The macro functional structure is done or completed as we speak. If we could move on to the next slide. And then the divisional structures we are aiming to conclude by the 30th of September. I must indicate here that in terms of the information that we obtained from the management team, the months of June and July are what I may refer to as dead months because of the nature of activities that are included in that time. June comes just after the election month, and the STP has touched on the nature of activities included there. And July is, we were informed, is the budget month. So they are excluded in there. So that is the deadline that excludes the 2 months. And then implementation, we aim to be done by the 31st of January 2025. And then the embedding process, we should be done by the 31st of March 2025. So in a nutshell, that is the stages and the processes and the deadlines or targets that we are looking for. I think this concludes my presentation as far as org realignment is concerned. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I've been struggling to unmute. Thank you very much. STP, can we then get the last presentation?
Good evening, Chair and co-chairs and honor members. Thank you so much for the opportunity that we're given to present the update, the committee on the Chair. Can you hear me, Chair? Co-chair? Chair, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Dr. Yankees.
Thank you so much, Madam Cindy. Please, load our presentation there, Cindy. Very greatly appreciated. I think, Chair, while Cindy loads the presentation, I just want to remind members to thank the opportunity for the TBO to also update the committee in part on the matter that we raised during our annual reporting last year in November, but also provide some of the situation, what has been done over the years in terms of supporting Parliament in supporting the office in fulfilling its mandate set out in the Manifest Act in particular. But I think I suppose the main issue for me here is to request the committee to continue deliberating on these issues, more so, to remind the committees how much this matter really impacts on the functioning of the office, in particular, in giving the full effect on supporting parliamentary oversight as a whole. So this presentation is quite short, just to provide a helicopter view on some of the key issues, and which are continuously impacting in the office ability to deliver on its mandate as set out in the Act in particular. But I guess also it does provide opportunity how the interface that is required to be done with regard to the entire oversight model of Parliament in particular. So I'll just go to the next slide. Just provide us key issues, and the last slide is just to say what have we done.
Recording stopped.
I guess the next slide.
Recording in
progress. The main
progress.
issue for us, Chair and members, is really around the really long-standing issues of the office, and the main thing here is since the office was established in 2013, 2014, there hasn't been so obvious mechanisms to be able to really ensure that the office is empowered in particular to deliver its mandate fully. And at the heart of it has always been the budget, and really ensuring that the office has enough budget to really fulfill this mandate as required in the Act. There are specific service delivery requirements are set out in the Act in terms of what the office has to do. Some of them have been able to do over the years, but a large of some of the areas we've not been able to cover, particularly due to limited budget or lack of providing budget in line with the Act itself, because the Act does provide clear processes in terms of how the office ought to be funded, but also how the office ought to be accountable or deliver on its mandate. The areas that my wish would have been that we should have dealt with this over the time, it's around really looking at substantive analysis within the sectors of economy in particular. There are also issues around a lot of unfunded mandate, and also some of the key areas of provision that we have been requested over time by various committees on giving advice in consideration some amendments. But I guess this also touches on what the STP was saying around what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the clear rules are guided in that regard. And there's an important role that we are playing, but short of providing full support in that regard. And I think our concern, as we said last year, this really does reflect of how the non-compliance has taken place over time. In particular, there are provisions set out how the office will be funded. I think over time, there hasn't been clear discussions, a very clear indicative how the process would ensure the office able to function is set out quite clearly. And I think that's been a frustration, particularly when I took the role 3 years ago, where I tried to look at how to intervene and so on. And I think the issues of predictability in the budgeting process, particularly in able to plan oversight or support from the side, has been very limited in a way that we often have to really deal on an annual basis. We are not able to really plan a long term and provide a strategic view on the oversight or on the impact of budget on some of the key social development objectives set out in various policies in the Constitution, various policy priorities measures set out by government or by Parliament at least. And we recognize that there has been calls by the EA over the time in regards to saying there has been a lot of discussion. And my wish is that the conclusion of the sixth Parliament will take these measures in place and they get also prioritized, particularly looking at when they're starting of the seventh Parliament. I think for me, some of the areas that has also concerned me, it's that the fact that when you look at in 2018, 2019, the Act was amended. One of the areas that was addressed by the Act is to clarify the office's governance and reporting mechanisms, and they really place so much accountability responsibilities in the director in particular. And that process has now been followed through by the results to ensure that fulfillment of such important governance mechanisms are actually fully implemented in particular. And that has been a worry over time. I've raised this a lot of times. We are doing these mechanisms as an interim arrangement that we have at the stage, but that has really compromised office, in particular in fulfilling our governance responsibilities as well as part of the process. The next slide, Alfred. So and one of the areas that has been very, very specifically impacting on over and above the lack of budget has also been the way we've been able to recruit staff. Clearly, the current interim arrangement has been more restrictive in a way which really has been very frustrating to us, in particular, not being able to effectively or move with the speed to get to recruit, particularly look at how much we are competing with many entities in government for better skills and experienced personnel. It's been very difficult, takes longer time, on average 7 months, 6 months, just to recruit or replace staff that goes out. And for a small office like us, that's been very painful, in particular to say this mechanism would make it very difficult for the office to fulfill its mandate in particular. And I think this is largely due to interim arrangements that we've had, which we did those arrangements, when I started 3 years ago. But clearly that's been very helpful in a lot of extent, but I think that has become very burdensome in actually being rendering the office ineffective, able to deliver or at least able to implement the plans that we set ourselves for. And one of the main concerns that we raised over the years, which in a way we feel impacts our ability for planning purposes, particularly for the MTF, is a lack of very clear budget process for Parliament itself. A lack of appropriating Parliament's budget has really impacted a lot on us, because we go on and do our planning process for the medium term, and that process doesn't really allow us to fit into the whole mechanism, set our own business plan for 3 years, and not much gets taken on board from interlinking the two. And the fact that there isn't very clearly set out appropriation bill has been, or Parliament has been one of the areas that makes it difficult for us. In particular, we submit the business plans, the budgets made from MTF, but it's not clear how that gets processed within the Parliament ecosystem as a whole. And it's important, in line with what the Secretary was saying earlier on, that clarify that framework out quite explicitly. For me, it's important to have very clearly appropriate budget for Parliament, or clear mechanism that shows how Parliament's budget is appropriate over 3 years, and that enables better planning, at least for us in that regard. One of my concerns I raised last year in the committee meeting is really the impact of this prolonged process it has in staff morale in the office, or particularly make it difficult for us to obtain much needed talented and skilled personnel. I'm pleading with this committee that these are very important issues. Debate this a lot in the office. We could keep saying, no, we have submitted this matter, we have promised there will be discussion, but we limited progress made, and it worries me a lot. And we've lost staff members can see that really that because some of things are prolonged for 10-year period, and it's very important in our view, particularly if my thinking, I've always thought that PBO is a strategic entity of Parliament, but look at what's happened over the past year. I'm starting to think how strategic the entity is seen, particularly if there isn't much investment done to ensure that there's clear mechanisms for this office to give effective support of our side as well. So those are some of the key challenges, which again is repetitive, but I want to re-emphasize them when this committee closes, debate this, and also take these matters in the next Parliament. Next slide, last slide. I think in the last slide, also reflect on what we have been able to do over time, and it's part of really playing our part, if I use that word, playing our part. We've done our part in particular, and a lot has been held by the Act itself, because the Act itself, it does provide for a clear service delivery mandate for the office, and also clearly governance and accountability mechanism framework that we put in place, and also how the office is managed in particular. And that has been helpful because it really helped us to set ourselves in terms of what we see our role as to be in oversight as whole. And I keep emphasizing that we see our role a lot as to providing the insight on how the budget impacts socio-economic issues, how the budget implements, improves the unemployment, how the budget improves the growth of economy, how the budget deals with inequality. Last week at the Appropriations Committee, we have built a capability that has been able to allow us to say to members of Parliament, to say, look, both houses of Parliament, this proposal budget would not necessarily give us growth that we want. Now we are starting to provide that analysis, but I think with very limited resources that we have, we could drive quite a lot within the sectors as a whole, where we say how much this budget means for the sectors, in particularly thinking about the developmental initiatives that are set out for different clusters of the government department and so on. And in all what we do, or how we need to do the work over time, really would have inspired a lot by the guidance of the Executive Secretary and Advisory Board when we started, where we had agreed that we'll have an interim arrangement where we operate or co-share some of the corporate functions, which enables us to deal with business operational management framework within that process. But there were conditions set out for that process to in place, certain arrangements in place. And the main issues there were really about the office over time of this intelligence, build its own capability in these areas, but also importantly, we developed very strategic approach in terms of how we go about collaborating with some of the states of Parliament that are structured to Parliament as required also by the Act, but also being able to ensure that we continue with our reporting regularly as required by the Act, that regularly, quarterly, we must submit performance financial reports annually, biannually, and we continue to, and that process has been very helpful to enable us to process, to give account as required by your best practice, and also by the Act itself, and say on a regular basis for account with whatever allocation that would have been given. And that has been helpful. But however, I think the message that I'm trying to decide is that this interim arrangement has been very good, but at the same time has been very counterproductive in many instances. Hence, we have been able to build some of this capability ourselves. And the main thrust of it is giving operationalization of this and ensuring there's better budgeting in place, but also human capital to ensure that some of these mechanisms are being implemented over time. And this is really my wish, co-chair, the members, that these matters are deliberated on within the wider discussion on the Parliament's budget, and also are taken on in the next committee. And really appreciate once more for this committee to have ensure that we can provide account as required by the management in this regard. So I think that's when co-chairs, that's what really I wanted to update the committee on. And thank you so much for the opportunity once more to update the committee in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Advocate Janji, I think one is not satisfied. I would want you to just simplify this for us. How much was allocated for the past financial year to this program? What is your structure? How is the office structured? And so far, how many people have been recruited? I think just in summary, if you can just share with members and with the committee as to how much was allocated for the past financial years, and so far, how many people have been recruited, and what are the strategic positions that needs to be filled for the office to be fully functional, because we've been dealing with this for the past 5 years. We understand also and appreciate the fact that there's been budget cuts, but I'm not hearing you, saying anything new or giving us any hope that the office will be up and running in the near future. So if you can just please summarize that for us. Members, the floor is open for questions, comments, and solutions. Cindy, can you help me to identify hands?
Will do, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Moletsane is the first hand. So far, the only hand, Chair.
Dr. Moletsane?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening to everyone. My clarity question goes along with what we have just said, Chairperson. I just wanted that more clarity on that doctor should clarify whether, because he mentioned on his presentation that lack of sufficient budget and human capacity. On the issue of human capacity, is it because the office is understaffed, or is it because the staff that is in his office they lack human capacity? And maybe is it that can be caused? Maybe that whether that it is caused by being overloaded by their responsibilities. Hence, it makes them to find themselves not being able to perform. So if you can clarify that for me, I'll be very happy. Thank you, Chairperson.
Mr. Taiso, Chair.
Have we lost the chairpersons?
No, sorry. I got cut for a few seconds. My humble apologies. I might have missed what you have raised, Tate Moletsane. Am I back? Am I audible, Cindy?
Yes, you're audible, Chair.
No, Tate Moletsane, my humble apologies. I missed your inputs. Is there any other comment? Members? Cindy, can you help me to identify? Yes.
Yes, Kaiso, Chair.
Yes, Member Kaiso, please. The platform is yours.
Yes, Chair, no, I'm actually covered by your earlier remarks on the both presentations. Yeah, on the second presentation on the PBO's office, I think a number of there are a number of gray areas there in as far as how does the office operate without resources. So I think it's very important that it should be taken into consideration. But then where I want to go to is the last part of the presentation, Chair, that was raised around staff recruitment, etc., because I thought earlier we would receive, or the PBO would say, here is a staff establishment plan, and then costed in terms of whoever that is there, so that at least the PBO also has an idea of what actually it means to say, I do not have a staff, but it will be an ideal thing that there is also an establishment structure that is presented before the committee. But I just want to know from the PBO, is there such a thing that perhaps should be an additional on the presentation? It's still coming, or what? Because it's not going to have, or it would not sound well if we just generally say, I need people. But then if you say, I have a printed idea in terms of the structure, but it is not costed one, or it needs to be costed, be supported by you know, as the presentation goes. So I just want to know whether is there such a structure also. But the rest of the thing, I think I'm covered by your earlier input as you opened, Chair, on the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tate Kaiso. Any inputs? If none, Tate Janchi, you know, without this office occupying its rightful position in Parliament, there's nothing that Parliament is going to achieve. And I'm not sure what type of support you also are requiring, because we've tried, you know, we've given you all the support, and I mean, that's the sentiments that I'm sharing, that I'm hearing also from members, that a lot has been done, I mean, for the past 10 years. And also maybe for you to saying that you want your own human resource, is that not going to be a duplication from the current structure of Parliament? So we're raising all this because we want to help you craft a clear recommendation as to what needs to be done. You know, going forward, the 7th Parliament, what is it that they're supposed to do? In making sure that this office, the first 4 months of the new committee, this office must also be running, because we can't have these stories, you know, for 10 years. It's unacceptable. You know, if we really go long, I would say that Janchi Kujisa team, man. Everybody's pulling, but the most important and strategic office that is supposed to guide and lead Parliament, and also to assist Parliament to set its authority. Every time it comes before the committee, it just complains. No solutions. You want help. We've tried. We've created an enabling environment for you to flourish, for you to come and tell us, unlock this, do that. But we're not getting that, So please, can you just maybe respond to the questions that members have raised? And whatever you say, you should know that it is going to be reflected in our legacy report. I'll pause there.
Chair. Co-chair.
Co-chair. Yes, co-chair.
Thank you, my dear. I just want to make a comment to Team Parliament and PBO, inclusive of PBO. Today, Co-Chairperson, I know you were on the ground. You might have not heard the presentation that I've made on behalf of your good selves in the NCOP. I've made 3 reports, and my request is that the management of Parliament, both NCOP and NA, must go through our recommendations and the concerns that we have raised, because we have done that. These reports that we have adopted as a joint committee also incorporate the recommendations to 7th Parliament. This is going to help in terms of improving the mandate, the expectation, the perceptions, and also attending to issues, concerns that the citizens, the members, and different organizations are having on us as a 6th Parliament. And I just want to say to you, Co-Chairperson, the whip and the members, including the team from Parliament, that one is happy to be part of this team that has improved, because we have to move steps forward and not steps backward. From 5th Parliament, we know the attitude that it was there in 5th Parliament, and we have tried our utmost best. We started in a very hostile and bitter footing, but we were strong enough because we're united. We had the same focus, and the STP, as he joined us later, he was very focused and very cooperative. So is the executive committee, as and when they were available, they were able to come and account on issues that we wanted them to account. I'm saying this, Chairperson, at the back of my mind, thinking that this is our last meeting for this term, but if need be, we will speak amongst ourselves with our whip. Also wanting to thank the support that we got from the support. Really, I want the officials, the management or the team from Parliament to go through the report so that you can improve and attend to the concerns and the recommendations that we have raised in our reports, irrespective of who is there, for the sake and the interest of South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair. I wanted to stop you so that we allow the STP and the team, and the Janji in particular, to respond before you can sum up and make the closing remarks, but it's fine. You can have a second bite, it's fine. And Tata Janji, can you respond?
Chairperson, maybe before Dumi responds, I'm not sure whether these are legacy hands. I noticed 3 hands.
Yeah, I see 3 hands as well. I see Date Hadebe and Date Kaiso. Date Hadebe? Date Kaiso, do you want to have a second bite? Date Becky? Date Hadebe?
All right. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and all the members on the platform and all the support staff of Parliament and the STP and the team. Good evening, everyone. I think that because we are moving towards the end of the 6th Parliament, I think that I'll have to concur with you, Chairperson, that a lot of work has been done. A lot could have been done, but it was, as you know, that the COVID saga came it came as a hiccup, and then a lot of things were a little bit restrained when dealing with these issues. But what is critical here, Chairperson, I think that from both the 3 presentations which we had today, I think that as the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament, we have to support these reports. The issue of the financial allocation of Parliament, the appropriation of Parliament, it must be done. So the issue of the review or the amendment of the Act plus the issue of the rules, the regulations around the Act, there must be a priority for the 7th Parliament. But I also get hope on the fact that this issue of a structural relationship between the Treasury and the group, I think that we don't need another committee. The Joint Standing Committee can be through the rule, through the regulations. The Joint Standing Committee can become the committee, because as it was alluded to, that immediately when the budget is tabled, what happens is that the SCOF and the SCOA are given the mandate to go and interrogate that budget. So what must happen also is that before even this allocation is done, there must be a thorough engagement between this committee and the Treasury, so that we assume our rightful place. The committee assumes its rightful place as the other arm of the state. On the issue of organizational realignment, I think that the next Parliament is going to start in a better footing. It's very clear that a lot of things are going to be done, and then there are structures which are far improved from what you cannot say that what is in the past was bad, but we always look forward to improve the system. I think from what had been presented here, I think that the 7th Parliament is going to be in a better footing. But also the issue of the support of the Budget Office is so critical. It's a fact that it is there in the legislation. So if the legislation is not complied with, it means that we are all complicit on that regard. I think that what must happen is that let's deal with the funding of Parliament and also ensure that as the co-chair president said, that we cannot be speaking the same thing all over and all over again. I remember Albert Einstein once said that you cannot do the same thing all over and expect a different result. So what must be critical here is that we must take the bull by its horns and then ensure that we give the 7th Parliament a better footing. But I think that these issues of these 3 reports and all the recommendations as they're coming from, as the Honorable Co-Chairperson Mashanga said, is that Cindy, they must feature big time on the issue of the legacy report, so that the committee which is going to be established immediately after the elections, the program must already be set out that what's the first thing we're going to do with the issue of the appropriation of Parliament, the issue of the regulation of the LP, the issue of the support, the issue of the restoration of parliament, the budget, those are the priorities which must be put down numerically so that by the order of their importance. But with this organizational realignment, I think the 7th Parliament will be a better place to be. Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank each and everyone who was part of the team of Parliament for the job well done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ntate Hadebe. I'll now pause and invite the STP and the team to respond.
No, thank you very much. I would ask Dumi to respond first, and then I would sum up.
Thank you so much, the co-chairperson and members. Thank you so much for the questions, also for the guidance as well in this regard. I think the wish for me, which we raised before, was to have requested more time to brief this committee, because I think what has been the case, we've not had enough opportunity to brief the committee with the work that we do and what specifically are the matters that we have. But also even the invitation for tonight, it was just on specific issues. But clearly, we have presented an annual report last year, which shows how much we've achieved our targets, how much we've provided support into the committees. But what I'm saying is that it's just a bit that the presentation itself was asked to speak on specific issues. And I complain about this also in November. But I think just to answer the question, maybe that could be one of the issues that's taken forward, that there has to be more engagement between this oversight committee with the office, so that the members are quite aware what this office is doing and what this office is doing supporting oversight in particular. And at this stage, we've been working with 4 committees very regularly. I know Honorable Maslangu is on the board, on the platform now. She could attest some of the work that we do. But I'm saying we annually present annual business plan, where we clearly specify what we do and we provide feedback on that on a regular basis. I'm back to specific questions, and I'm happy to do that again, to engage specifically on that, as would have been my wish, as I expressed earlier last year. But I think some of the specific response, the office co-chairs, it's been given allocations over the year. And I think what the message I'm trying to emphasize is that the allocation has been so limited for us to do everything that we're required to do. So we have prioritized finance and appropriations committees dealing with fiscal framework, judicial revenue, appropriations bill, which on regular basis provide support on that, given the head count that we have in the office. It's not so much about the capability of the team, but so much the head count that we have. And in that regard, so much has been done, and not much has been achieved a lot. And as I'm saying, it's likely because we are not able to have a 3-year planning cycle as required by the Act. And I recognize and appreciate the issues around the budget of Parliament. I've got my own issues about the fiscal of the country, but I'm not going to talk about it here. But we do have that mechanisms where we have to appreciate what's happening. But I'm saying we have done the work that we're supposed to do. We've reported to show the committee last year in November, and I'm happy to provide that regularly. The second point around the specific budget, which again links back to the issue of giving effect to the office itself. There are specific accountability requirements for the director in the Act, and that requires resources. What I'm saying is that when I talk about the chair talks about the human resource, I'm not looking to have a human resource in the office, but I'm required to report to human resource of the office. But I'm saying I need mechanisms to report to you today, to say to you, here's the issues around human resource. But I can't, because I don't have mechanisms within the office that can provide that capability for me to report to you. But I'm saying within those contexts, it's what I'm concerned about, to say we do as we whatever we have in this regard. And I'm saying in future looking at it, those are very specific governance measures that the account office are going to report on those things. And there's so many other things. But we have continued to work within the Parliament ecosystem, and it's my wish to continue to work on it. But at the same time, the office should be able to allow or to be able to give effect to. Otherwise, it will continue to give limited support than the members want it to be. And I think it's not to give excuses, but just to state the fact that we have done a lot, and you'll see in the report that we've given out. And even the allocation itself, when we want to recruit, we can't recruit because we don't have mechanisms in place to allow us to do that. We have to rely on Parliament's administration mechanisms, which is, again, doesn't prioritize PBO, it prioritize what is required to prioritize because they're not accountable to what the office do. So there is those things that are beyond my control. I'm saying those things are impacting how I deliver on what I want to do or what I'm required to do. And I'm saying that requires, from me, my view, a more engagement where those specific things are spelled out and show how much of that is put in place. And at times we are unable to implement the budget because of the lack of capacity to be able to do those things within the structure. A specific question about whether staff is incompetent. I'm very proud of the staff that I have, very competent, and I'm very proud of them. The issue I was referring to is the headcount. Many committees send requests to us. We can't do them, largely because we've got a very limited headcount in doing that. And that's really the point I was making. I'm not saying they're incompetent because we go through a rigorous process to recruit staff that is able to provide support the office has done. And as I emphasized, it's really a lot of understanding nitty-gritty. And I'm happy to hear members that some of these matters were taken up as a priority at the beginning of the next term. But we have provided a report on that. I could ask Alfred to put the report back to fix those things, but I was not asked to present it. And all I'm asking is say, we have provided support and we wanted to provide more, but we couldn't do more because we have very limited resources in that regard. And one of the measures I'm proud of what the team has done, Chair, and I'm, to pronounce it, we've been able to build a capability that enables the office to advise House of Parliament on the impact of the budget on unemployment, on the impact of the budget on inequality, on impact of the budget on economic growth, and what needs to be done to try to, and that's very important. And I'm saying this is some of the share that we gave to the committee, and we would have probably liked more time to be more specific on that. And I will stop there and really thank again once more. I'm willing to provide specific points, as the co-chair said, on the matters that we want to appreciate the support of the committee, but also the matters that we feel in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term, what needs to be looked into if this office is to begin effective. And that, again, co-chair, let me repeat, it doesn't mean the office is not functioning. Office has been functioning, has been delivering on the set out target in our business plan, and we reported monthly, on a quarterly, and annually we reported on those issues. I think for me, what when I said what worries me is that there hasn't been a very clear and spelled out process in how these accounting reports are processed. And I was happy last year when for the first time, this committee considered our annual report. And I think it's a big step, and hence I'm very appreciative for the committee taking that regard to say, look, now we'll start to be more engaging, and you will now have a very clear understanding what the office does, and you will guide us as well on some of the priorities of oversight that the Parliament would want to look forward to. So I'm happy to provide input, as the co-chair said, as part of the legacy report. I'll stop there, Chair, and thank members and all colleagues on the platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you. SDP, can you summarize and give us the way forward, then we close the meeting?
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think there is room for improvement in a number of areas on what we do as Parliament. And some of these areas, of course, were executed on an angle of experimentation. Benchmarking internationally, benchmarking locally, having new legislation. And I think the more we are able to realize the fullness of each legislation, the letter and intent of it, the more we're able to assess the full impact. That will also assess us to attend to intervening factors that at a particular time you might have this piece of legislation, FMPPLA, you might have money amendment bills, amendment act rather, and there will be intervening factors in any period. It does offer space to look at certain things to strengthen, and I do think that there is merit on these two pieces of legislation to be looked at with the intention to tighten them. Amendment itself won't deliver results, but what it could do is to tighten how certain matters are dealt with. For instance, the issue of the budget office, the resource capacity they need, the options that will require them to be effective, accountability mechanisms that must be guaranteed, and also looking at the implications of the budget office in line with the macro 7th Parliament strategy framework, that Parliament is now gearing itself to focus on outcomes and impacts. And the budget office is primarily required to look at those issues in terms of assessing unemployment in any of the departments, the allocation of budgets, the balance in terms of fiscal issues horizontally and vertically. And what are the issues that Parliament must take into account in terms of realizing the national development goals? So the more offices are strengthened in that way. Where I need more application of the mind, Chairperson, is to deal with the urgent issues, which the director briefed me last year around the reporting accountabilities, the instruments, what was envisaged in the Act and what is currently obtaining, and the absence of a coherent issue, even if it's interim instruments, would go a long way to strengthen how priorities are outlined and how the work of Parliament itself, apart from the budget, begins to be shifted towards outcomes and impact. So those issues offer huge scope for us to look at it, strengthen those issues, and how accountabilities overall are linked to make sure that there's no ambiguities in many areas. Otherwise, Chairperson, we are quite content with the progress so far, and be in a position to say there's room for improvements, and we look forward to providing advice to the 7th Parliament once it is established. Thanks.
Thank you very much, STP. Indeed, there is room for improvement, and the short space of time that you've been in Parliament, we have no doubt that you have done a lot in breaking new grounds and also providing leadership. The 7th Parliament foundation has been laid already. We wish you well. That's all we can say from us as the committee, that we wish you well for your endeavors, and that you should be able to attract the best team that will share your vision and be able to implement all the recommendations and resolutions for the betterment of the most important sphere of government, which is the legislature, and that you be able to strengthen the legislature, and that maybe in the future we turn the wheels. As South Africa, we have the stronger legislature over the executive. And having said that, I want to invite Mama Shangu to then sum up and maybe make comments and close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Co-Chairperson. I will just present my parting ways. As I indicated earlier, I'm coming back as per your directive as the Co-Chairperson. Still emphasizing that PBO and Team Parliament must look into our reports. I know we're still going to fine-tune the legacy report, but also all the reports that we've presented and have been adopted by the two houses. Those areas of recommendation, concerns and recommendations need to be taken into consideration. But I just want to say to the team, both members and Team Parliament, not to be hard on ourselves. I'm saying that with confidence, with my full chest, that we have done the best we could. And we have moved a few steps forward from where we came from. And we wish that in the next Parliament, those who will be with you, we wish them well. And we wish you well, that you go with the same spirit and work as a team. Very important that the issue of vacant posts, the filling of vacant posts, we know, also taken from my experience, that as an acting person for quite a number of years, that is also affecting your performance, because you are not sure of the decisions that you're taking. You are not confident of decisions that you need to take because you're acting. That psychologically and mentally and emotionally does impact on the work that you're doing. So we should not, we should consider the labor laws and not compromise on those areas, that we should not compromise the capacity of the incumbent of the post who are on acting capacity, for them to take decisions and stand firm on those decisions. Those things are not only impacting on those individuals, they're also impacting on the performance of the committees that they are serving. It's very, 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 very serious. And hence we do that. We are not saying that we should you should jump steps, but also that we are saying, let us do that in a very quick manner, but also observe the prescripts that are governing us as we do that. I really appreciate working with you. Like the chairperson have said, co-chairperson have said, myself, I don't know if this is really the last meeting that we're having. If it is, I want to say that co-chairperson, the whip, and everybody, I have learned a lot from this committee, from this team, because we have had the legacy report, we have read it, we knew the attitude that other members came with, and the perception that the houses had on this committee. And I want to believe that we have made an impact, and go with that spirit, that you have made an impact and there's a room for improvement. Focus on that one. Keep on consulting on what the Sixth Parliament has recommended or raised for you to consider. Thank you so much, Co-Chairperson. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Cindy, is this our last meeting?
This is our last meeting with the administration, Chair, but we've still got our own committee meeting to deal with committee business on the 26th.
Oh, okay. Do we still have room to make inputs on the legacy report?
Yes, Chair, members, in our last committee business meeting, members were requested to submit input in writing, but following the two meetings that we had Friday and this one of today, the team will still be making additions based on the presentations we received.
Okay. All right. We'll adjourn the meeting today, and in our next meeting also, which I think it will be our last meeting, maybe we can do our farewell speeches there. All members will be given at least a minute to do that, or 2 minutes to reflect on our relationship for the past 5 years and the challenges that we've gone through. Okay. STP, is there anything that you would want to say to members? I'm just giving you the last opportunity.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. The way we are so busy, we even forget that this is the last meeting. So I only realized as you were speaking that it's the last meeting of the Joint Standing Committee. I'm also noticing that maybe due to busy schedules of other members, there's many members who are absent in this engagement. There was a sitting this afternoon of the reply question, and perhaps there may be many areas that members are tending to. On our side, Chairperson, starting with myself specifically, from June 2022, June 2023, and June 2024, hopefully, it will then be 2 years having interacted with this committee. And being the last session today, I want to confirm my greatest appreciation and admiration for the work of this committee. A lot of work have been attended to meticulously, and a number of engagements by the committee, working under tremendous pressure, but guiding us in a whole range of areas. We do appreciate that. On the reconstruction of Parliament, you have paid particular attention to it. On the quarterly reporting, in terms of performance and finances, you have given us counsel in a number of areas, of which we are very grateful, including the key priorities of framing issues for the 7th Parliament, as well as the transition issues that we are all working on. So we have received your counsel with a great deal of appreciation. And we are almost thinking that it is a last meeting for the new meeting to take place. And that is our wish in terms of how we have received the support, the cordial and respectful manner in which the committee has received us, with all our shortcomings as management and the team that works with the committee. Your impact to us is only to allow us to grow, and well-meaning to make sure that all the issues we do, you give us the rear view mirror as well as the front mirror and the side mirrors. So we're quite confident that approaching the 7th Parliament would strengthen our resolve. And we look forward to many members, hopefully, being part of this committee going forward, Chairperson. That's only our wish. And we look forward to ongoing future engagement with the committee. On behalf of the team I have a privilege to lead, thank you very much for working with us this path, and we look forward to engagement with the committee, particularly yourselves, Chairperson, as co-chairs. You have really provided tremendous support to us and created a welcoming atmosphere for management of Parliament for different issues that have appeared. And that does not go unnoticed, your sterling leadership on those areas. So on behalf of this team I lead, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, STP. Thank you, Siyabonga. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
Good night.
Thank you, Whip. Thank you, Team Parliament.
Thank you.
Till we see you again.